Did you perchance plant some hairy beard tongue, but you didn't mark it, and now it's springtime and there's about 10 things coming up and you're like, oh, which one of these is my plant? I got you covered, baby. This video is going to look at what Penstemon hirsutus looks like when it's coming up in the springtime. So just as always, to make sure we're talking about the same thing, Penstemon hirsutus has a few different common names. And then here are the specs on this plant, just to make sure we're on the same page here. So I have two locations that I'm going to show you what it looks like coming up in the spring. So this is an established Penstemon hirsutus plant that you'll be looking at. This first location here is in a partial sun location. The other one is a full sun. So this is what it looks like coming up in the springtime. This is early spring, which is mid-March for me. What's early spring for you? And you can see that it is greenish. These are about an inch tall, maybe half an inch. And the middle vein and stalk there are sort of a purplish reddish color. Now, at the bottom there, you can see on some of these that there are some kind of bigger greenish looking leaves. Oh, that one has a lot of them, right? Those are basil leaves, and a lot of those are left over from last year. So depending on where you live, depending on your plants, sometimes you get those big green leaves on the ground left over from last year. And sometimes you don't. So some of these plants have them and some don't. That just depends. But you can see the new ones that are coming up that are going to make the flower stalks this year. Well, they look like that, sort of smooth looking leaves, a sort of reddish purplish vein up the middle. And this is that same partial sun location. This is about 2 weeks later, so mid-spring, early April, just to show you what it'll look like. These are maybe 4 inches tall, give or take. To me, they almost look like some kind of lettuce. Some of those leaves look that way a little bit to me. In this partial sun location, when they come up, you can see this reddish purplish on that central stalk, or those central stalks, and the middle vein on those leaves. But in partial sun locations, that will start to disappear. They end up a little not quite as reddish purplish. So there can be some variation when you're looking at yours coming up in the spring as to how much red purple is there. And so again, on some of these, you can see those leaves left over from last year along the bottom. And other ones like this one, I don't see anything left over from last year. This all looks new coming up. And also in some of these, like this one, you can see that a rosette is sort of formed. And so as they come up and mature, along the outside, you kind of get the leaves coming up taller and the stalks that will make flowers. And in the middle is more of your foliage, and it's closer to the ground. People call that a rosette. So this is the full sun location now. So we're going back in time to early spring. For me, again, that's mid-March. And in this full sun location, there's definitely a lot more of the reddish purple to the leaves as they come up. Of course, you can still see green as well. And so here in this early spring, they're about maybe a half an inch or an inch tall. I can see there's a couple leftover basil leaves from last year there. Okay, this is just as before. This is 2 weeks later, just so you can see what they look like a little bit later as they're coming up. And in this full sun location, some of the leaves are still a little smaller here than in that partial sun spot. I found the partial sun spots always seem to be a little bit ahead of the full sun spots. That could just be my yard though. But in these full sun locations, the reddish greenish on the leaves and on the stalks should become more pronounced over time. Here you can see those green, you can see the rosette better. In the middle it's a little more flat, and on the outside you can see they're starting to come up in what will be the flowering stalks. You can see the rosette here reasonably well too. A little shorter on the inside, bigger on the outside. These are maybe 3 or 4 inches tall. The hirsutus in this name refers to how the stalk will end up sort of fuzzy, but as it's just coming up in the spring, you don't usually get much fuzziness yet on the stalks. Everything is sort of smooth at first. And just for funsies, this is about a week after that last video, still in the full sun spot, because I'm not sure when you're watching this video, at what early stage you're looking to get a view of. So mid-spring for me, which is mid-April, you can start to see the central stalk is becoming the reddish purple in this full sun location. And these are maybe 5 inches tall at this point here, maybe 6 inches. And again, this rosette, as they call it, to me is becoming obvious here. The middle is pretty low, and it's around the edge that things are coming up. And it's around the edge, again, those are going to be all the flowering stalks. Ignore that piece of plastic. That's previous homeowners planted plastic underneath all the flower beds to prevent weeds from growing. Doesn't work that great. And this is a week later again, in the full sun spot. I just wanted to show you a few of the early shots that you'll be, of what your plants will look like. I have written down these are 6 inches tall here. And so there you are. There's your Penstemon hirsutus in partial sun and full sun as what it looks like as it's coming up. And depending on the sun and the age, there can be that reddish purplish color to it. Sometimes it's very dramatically red and purple, and other times it's a little bit more green. And that's it. Now you know. You know what are the weeds to pull out and what is actually your Penstemon hirsutus, and don't pull it out. Oh my goodness. Plant native, my lovelies.